we're talking
Gonna
about
have it
Peter
over here.
Pan.
Yes, sir.
This is one I feel like a lot of people have had takes on, and I think there's a lot of good symbolism there to unpack. Obviously, it's a story people have referenced a lot. It's one of the older 19 I know it came out in the 50s. When did this one? Do you have specific
This
dates on it?
the cartoon came out in the 50s. I got a little info here on the
Yeah,
background. So
let's.
interestingly about Peter Pan, total invention of the character. Started as a play that was first produced in 1904. I got to say, honestly, I haven't seen the play. I haven't
Okay.
read the original book. So I'm working off of synopses here, so I apologize. I have seen, the movie about Jan Barrie portrayed.
The Johnny Depp one?
Yeah, by Johnny
Yeah,
Depp. Great movie. As far as I can tell, pretty decent portrayal
sure.
of this like very strange man individual who authored this play and these others. And so, from what I can tell, the Disney portrayal is pretty darn close to the
Hmm.
original in terms of plot, even down to the character who played Wendy, Peter, and Michael's dad
Yeah.
also played Captain Hook, which
Right,
is
right.
also true of the cartoon.
Oh, interesting.
So clearly important to the
Yeah.
themes
Yep.
in Peter Pan. It introduced the idea of Peter Pan syndrome. I don't know that it is the intent of the play and the book to portray Peter as necessarily suffering some kind of syndrome. Pretty amazing thing to introduce into culture that Peter Pan, the syndrome, the character, like
Yeah.
it's Western canon. Like
Yeah.
it's thoroughly a part of
Well, so
the
the idea of the Peter Pan syndrome, the boy that doesn't want to grow up, and we reference that all the time of people who are in their own arrested development. They've not grown up, they're still living in their parents' basement and failure to launch. But Peter Pan, he's the hero of the story. He's the one
right.
who all the kids want to be, and that's like on the surface very much there.
Now, is he the hero, or is because our story in terms of
The Disney
I
one?
think the play and in the Disney one, like it really centers around Wendy.
Okay.
And so I would argue that while Peter Pan is the headliner, he really doesn't have an arc. And
No. Yeah.
Wendy has an arc.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know if Peter and Michael really have arcs.
No.
But, I mean, some kind of development,
Well, let's
but like not like a
so like
yes.
let's get into it because I think like as you look at the plot, I think it's right. I think Wendy is the one who the story starts where it's her last night in the nursery. She's gonna get her own room and she doesn't
Hmm.
want to grow up. And
Hmm.
that's I think when most people remember this, you forget that like that's the start of the movie is her not wanting to be there, which and then so it's gonna be her last night in the room with her brothers and she ends up kind of taking care of these little punks the whole time and then that's when kind of Peter Pan shows up and the journey to Neverland starts the but yeah, Wendy growing up, maturing, and ultimately like taking on the role of mother and caretaker to a lot of these guys is really her arc.
Yeah, yeah. And she at first is like mortified. Like it's just the
Yeah,
worst thing that she's gonna have to
right.
leave. And mom and dad are leaving for a party and leaving everyone in her care. So she's already mature
Yeah, she's
enough
already
that
the
they're
oldest
like,
kid and
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Now, of course, at this time you could already like have a career as like a clerk or like been working in coal mines for 10 years by the
Yeah.
time you're her age. But so they leave him alone in her care and
How old do you think her character is? I get 10, 11, 12
I mean,
ish.
I'm gonna guess, given the other themes involved, like attraction and all those things.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna guess she's like
Yes.
bat mitzvah age. Like
Okay.
she's
Yeah.
like, 12,
No,
13,
that makes sense. Yeah.
14.
Yeah.
And certainly like entering puberty, which I think is very important to like
Yeah.
the themes at work here. Old
A
enough
lot
to
of the
be,
feminine, a
yeah,
lot of the feminine story arcs of for Disney around this era involved growing up, coming of age, and attraction, all that, and what do you do now that that is part of her life, making that adjustment?
yeah. Yeah, and and the way that those themes relate to her, as opposed to like Peter and Michael are fine. Like they kind of end as children. They
Yeah,
just end as children who would rather be at home. Like they do know that they're choosing to engage in the path of maturing, but they don't have it
sure.
like foisted upon them.
Right.
And men, if we can talk about the symbolism and the themes here, and like
Yeah.
jump in with your actual knowledge on this, but women are compelled by their biology to grow up
Yes.
more certainly and earlier than men. And so Wendy, in a certain sense, like she's right around 12 or 13, like she's going to go through some changes where it's like you really should not be sharing a room with a couple of little boys,
Definitely.
because like you're going to be a woman whether you
Yep.
like it or not.
Right.
And a man sort of becomes a man at some point in the distant future.
Right.
Like there
Right.
isn't there are like obviously like women get their period, and it's like, okay, well, that's a pretty clear indication that
Yeah. Yeah.
they're like you have a
Yep.
Rubicon.
You are now in a new chapter of your life.
Yeah, and it's
Yep.
it's pretty undeniable, and it's involuntary,
Hmm.
and so it's I think it's one of the I think it's part of why there are so many fairy tales and
Yeah.
stories around this, because it is I think of like the movie My Girl, and like
Yeah.
how traumatized she is.
Yeah.
Of course, she's like got her own psychological things going on related to it,
Sure.
or like the movie Carrie, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a trauma to it, and
Yeah. Well,
so
but it's all about like it's you're thrust into this world of horrific things happening to you that you didn't expect, and now like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this?
yeah, and so it does happen overnight. It's
Hmm.
like one on one end edge of this barrier, you're still
Yeah.
a little girl and you can run around and you can skin your knees, and
Yep.
you're a peer to all of these wretched. I mean, you're spending time with middle schoolers, and like middle school
Yeah.
boys are some of the most unfortunate creatures in existence. And and then bang, you are entering a new world. Like,
Yep.
and there's no going back, and
Yeah.
you're a woman.
Well, it's
And
interesting with the in Peter Pan when they first get to Neverland, she kind of tours around Neverland with Peter, and they go to the mermaids, and the mermaids just treat her like shit. They
oh
just
yeah,
like,
yeah,
who the
yeah,
hell is this girl? They're super threatened by her. They do not want
yeah,
her around, and Peter's oblivious to it. He does not
right,
get that. Like, he's like, oh, isn't this cool? Check out all this stuff, and he's like, there's this whole like mean girl dynamic thing that's going on. It's over his head. He doesn't get it.
yeah, yeah. Which comes back to same with Tinkerbell.
Yep.
Like
Yeah. Tinkerbell
Tinkerbell
hates
actually
Wendy.
tries to kill Wendy,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like, and so again, I'm quoting, I'm referring to things that I don't have the references for, but I believe that studies have shown that the suppression and advancement that women experience, like in the workplace and
Mm,
socially, the suppression is often worse for when they have women that are superiors than when they have
mm.
men that are superiors. That sort of queen bee,
Oh, sure.
that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like that intra
Yeah. Hmm.
feminine competition is a
Yep.
little like nastier
Yep.
than competition between men and women.
Yep.
And so I love, like, she, as soon as it's like Neverland is sort of like her, like it's like extrapolating that trial period for her of like, okay, this is what it's gonna be like you're gonna realize that men, like, boys remain boys for a while. Like,
Yeah.
it sucks, but like they're gonna be pretty dumb and helpless and naive, and like
Yep.
wonder eyed at you,
Yeah.
as like nature just takes you into this. And
Yep.
then also other women are going to be like, your relationship with other women is going to change as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I will all the interactions with women, the female characters in Peter Pan, it's all very relational, competitive. There's Tinkerbell, Wendy, the mermaids. There's all the yeah, there's this competitive thing with each other that starts happening. And all the boys, they're just oblivious and wanting to play games the whole time.
Yeah,
They're not aware to that at all.
right.
They want to fight with each other, they want to play hide and seek with each other, they want to play, pirates and Indians, and also like they're living in Neverland.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
and I think that's indicative of the male maturity as well. Like
Hmm.
I even wonder about Peter Pan syndrome being just a description of the how slow
Sure.
the
Oh,
male
that's
maturity
interesting.
process is, or how slow it is unless it is intentionally entered into
Yeah.
and interdicted. And one of the things, to my understanding of Western society at the time that it was written, all the way up until now, there are no rites of passage. Like we do not have cultural
Mm,
rites of passage the way, like, after spending time in Kenya, like most of the rural villages, like they undergo a circumcision
yeah.
around this age,
Right.
and it's very public, and it's a rite of passage. It comes with
Yep.
like humiliation and like all these other things. See if you can endure it. To And again, it's like there is no retreating back across this room.
Right.
Like
Right.
it's and so I think without some kind of event placed into the boy's life to
Hmm.
go like, now
Yeah.
it has to be artificially conceived
Yeah.
because there isn't,
Because there's no
despite
biological mechanism thrusting you into that. Right.
yeah, and whatever that biological process is, it's extrapolated and it evolves over time.
Yeah.
And like a man, and so I'm rereading Jane Austen right now, and so the 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 divide between the female and the male is like all the females in these Jane Austen books are teens and early 20s,
Hmm.
and all of their romantic interests are like 30s and 40s. Like
Right.
occasionally someone
Right.
in their 20s, and it's usually kind of like if you're wise, you won't pursue a guy in their 20s
Right.
because they're not worth a damn yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And especially now in America, like the divide between like male development and female development is boys are so undeveloped in
Yeah.
the modern West. Men aren't worth a damn until their 30s or 40s for sure anymore.
Right.
Maybe later.
Right.
I don't think I was worth a damn until maybe 30, 32, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. What do you think of all that?
No, I mean, like, I think it's right. What it makes me think of is it's kind of this is my take on Captain Hook, and I'll explain how it loops in. I think I heard it. I think it was a Peterson thing, but he talked about like Captain Hook as like Peter Pan. Why would Peter Pan want to grow up if the only adult he sees Captain Hook? He's this big thing, but I
Yeah.
don't actually. That's not actually my take. I kind of
Okay,
view
go.
it that differently
Great.
because
I love it.
I think Captain Hook is the kid who never left Neverland. He's the one grown up who's still there, who
Mm,
is playing with kids, and everyone hates him. Like
yeah, yeah,
the,
yeah.
even at the beginning of like when he's introduced, his crew are like, "We need to leave. We need to set sail. What are we still doing here?" And he's like, "I gotta get Peter Pan." He wants to like he's so wrapped up in I gotta win the battle against him, and like the grown-ups who are still kind of with him and following him are like, what are we doing here? Like he's the oldest guy at the frat party. He's the 60-year-old who's still going to like the punk rock shows, and like he's
Yeah,
kind
that's
of maybe
interesting.
got
I
a
like that.
reputation around that, but it's like I think that's kind of who you become if you don't leave Neverland. And then like we'll talk about the villain come up in piece two, but like the thing he's afraid of is the crocodile with the ticking clock. It's time catching up to him. It's
Hmm.
like you've known it's time for you to grow up and leave Neverland, but you're not. And every reminder there is of like, you're old, man. Like, you're not a kid anymore. It's
Yeah,
terrifying to him.
right. And he's
Um,
petty, and
yeah,
he's vindictive, and he's immature. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that's interesting. I really like that.
yeah. Because I think, well, and you said the thing about so like male maturity, right? It's like you don't have to. You can grow up. We all know people that have stayed kids till
Yeah,
late into their life and they still kind of die in that way. And it's like at first it's like all right, he's kind of cool. I remember graduating from college and seeing people it's like they're still pursuing like this certain type of artistic career and they have this kind of like youthful naivety about it and it's romantic, right? And then I see people who like yourself who are actually making a career in artistic endeavors and your approach is totally different. You're approaching this
Hmm.
like a grown up, like a business. Like this is I get up and I hone my craft. I'm working on this. I'm putting myself out there. I'm trying to figure out the best way of going. You know, and people who were pursuing, you know, when we were both living in LA, who were pursuing acting, who it's like you're 30s and you're partying like you're 20 out here, and now you're
Yeah, yeah,
40s and you're starting. Yeah,
pursuing.
I'm still
Yeah,
pursuing this, but it's like you're clearly not. You're Peter Pan. You're living this life,
yeah,
versus people who it's like, no, you're actually like taking your craft seriously and trying to make a go at it and trying to pay your bills. And you know, it's not an easy path,
yeah,
but it's very different when you see someone actually like approaching that from a place of maturity. So I think people all the time, men in particular, they don't ever have to leave Neverland.
yeah,
And they can live like that long and get into their life, and but it doesn't end in a good place. You become
yeah.
Captain Hook.
Yeah, and this is probably a completely different topic, and I don't have a fully formed thought on this, but that perhaps one of the things that we've seen emerge in the latter quarter of the 20th century and the time since is the adoption of the same maturity pattern. Like it has become equity in that sense. Like I now know tons of women who have remained girls. Like
Oh, sure. Yeah,
their
yeah.
conception of the way romance works, their conception of the way even like intersex play
Hmm.
works, and their tastes and their all of these things have
Yeah, yeah.
remained sort of at the level of complexity of like a 13 to 14-year-old girl,
Yep.
like their idea of like how dating and courtship works, and
Hmm.
like, and you know, anything you can do I can do better, which is like
Right, right.
it's a song for teenagers, and like,
Right, right.
and you know, all these grown women I know that like their reading level, for example, never really gets past YA. Like they're all
Hmm.
still reading novels for teenagers, and in a
Right.
sense it's like, well, Peter Pan syndrome, if it is a syndrome, maybe it's more aptly applied to women having
Sure.
Peter Pan syndrome because they're refusing to I think there's technology now as well that keeps both sexes in their adolescence.
Yeah.
And adolescence is a great place to keep a person if you would like to dictate to them how they should live their life,
Yeah.
and if you would like to sell them things, because adolescents consume, you know, they're
Yeah.
excellent consumers.
Right.
So yeah, like there's I can easily imagine a myriad perverse incentives to keep men and women in a prolonged adolescence,
Yeah.
because they want toys and they want
Yeah.
entertainment and they want silly
The
things.
the temptations to stay in Neverland are greater than they've ever been.
Yes,
Like
yes.
because I mean at the end of the story, ultimately Wendy and the kids make the decision like, no, we need to go back. Like
Yeah.
we need
And
to go and pursue this other path. And everyone
and
wants them
the
to stay.
and the rest of the Lost Boys go want to go too, right? Like I
Hmm.
don't think they do go in the animated version. I think in the play, I think in the story, I don't know if the Lost Boys leave. They do kill all the pirates, which is interesting.
Okay.
But yeah, Peter and Michael and Wendy definitely leave. And what is it that compels them to leave? Like I think maternity has,
Yeah.
you know, generally Peter and Michael long for their mom,
Yeah.
and Wendy has been experiencing maternity really because she's
Yeah.
raising all these boys while she's in
Yeah.
Neverland. Like it's kind of a
Yeah.
shit trip for Wendy.
Yeah, right.
She's the one that's got to like take care of everybody. And
Well, I okay, and okay, actually that's interesting because in that, do you think her choice to come back is like I'm not like she's not ready to be a mother. She
no,
recognizes she has that capacity. I need to go back and have my own room and grow up and mature because I see that this is not it's not time for me to be taking care of these guys. I can't stay here in Neverland
yeah,
where
and
this is my role.
and I also get the sense that she's like had enough. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I've had enough of being surrounded by Lost Boys.
Yeah, yeah.
Like somewhere out there, there's a medium between Hook and Pan,
Hmm.
and the affections of Pan are nice and all, but she's got to be moving on.
You mentioned
Um,
the thing about earlier with the same actor who plays Wendy's dad plays Hook.
Yeah,
And yeah, you can notice that. Like, I thought that was a really interesting symbolism as well, because even at the end, he says like, "Oh, I remember." He kind of alludes like, "Oh, I remember being in Neverland when I was little, and I almost forgot like what that was like,
yeah,
right?" And now,
yeah,
he's this stuffy lawyer business type. I know it's the movie Hook with Rob Williams, but like, but he's like he's a crotchety old man kind of thing, right? And there's this idea of like that guy's diverging paths. He took the path to grow up and became who he became, right? The other path would be he stays in Neverland and becomes Captain Hook.
yeah,
And you
yeah.
kind of see those two played out.
And we get to see the dad like sort of become gentle at the
Hmm.
end. He
Yeah.
gets wistful.
Yep.
He's like the sort of hardness that he experienced that he
Yeah.
demonstrates at the beginning softens, and it's that like integration of like the boy and man
Yeah, because
in
it's not that
that.
you forget Neverland. It's not that it's
Right.
not still like that was a part of your life and was a formative experience, but it's also you can't stay there.
Yeah, and there's something that C.S. Lewis said, and I swear it's like a footnote in something that where he talks about how like the most interesting and like delightful children are the ones that are like have some adult to them, and the most interesting and delightful adults are the ones that have
Yeah,
children still
that's good.
to them. And
Yeah.
so like there is an integration that is ideal. And you mentioned Hook, which is not, I don't think it's a Disney movie.
No, it's a Spielberg flick.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's Amblin, and I forget who distributed it, but
Yeah.
it's worth mentioning that like the story there, as and that movie pitches itself, like you can imagine the room when they pitched
Yeah.
Hook, and it's like,
Well, we're making that, right?
yeah, we're making that automatically,
Yeah.
and it's so good. And that story is that he has to reintegrate. It
Yeah.
is essentially the story of the dad at the end of the animated one. Is
Yeah.
like he gets to go back, he
Yeah.
gets to re-experience the boyhood, and
I
then
have to
he
return to
integrates.
Neverland in order to figure out how to connect with my kids, so I'm not
Yeah,
just like
and in order to
disconnected.
be like a loving,
Yeah.
who's both capable of great like violence and great compassion and
Yeah.
whimsy and seriousness, like all of these things need to
Yeah.
integrate.
Yeah.
And which is what we see in Wendy, is she
Hmm.
undergoes this. And so anyway, we're still sort of ranting on the idea that Wendy is the main character.
Yeah.
The alternative would be that Peter Pan is the main character and he's a catalyst protagonist, and he like
Yeah.
creates these changes in others.
Yeah.
But I don't think so, because he doesn't really have the same call to adventure that Wendy has.
No. I mean,
Yeah,
he does the things. He has the sword
yeah,
fights. He
he sort of is the
rescues
adventure.
the Indian princess. He
Yeah,
fights Captain Hook, right? So he's doing all the things. It's interesting because I feel like you watch this with your kids or you watch this as a kid, and Peter Pan feels like the hero because he's
yeah,
doing all the stuff. He's doing all the action, and it's like, and
yeah,
all the Lost Boys look up to him. It's like he's the cool guy, right? As an adult, you kind of look at him. It's like because my sense is like he's like he's the 12 or 13-year-old boy who's hanging out with all the like 8 to 10-year-olds and they all think he's awesome, right? But it's like, why are you not hanging out with anyone your own age, dude? Like,
yeah, yeah,
where's like yeah, he's the king of Neverland, but
yeah,
you're still in Neverland, right?
yeah,
It
yeah,
feels like he's kind of getting to an age where it's like it's starting to become inappropriate that he's there, right? Which tends to Peter Pan syndrome.
yeah. And he's kind of a jerk. Like
Hmm.
he throws his weight around.
Oh yeah.
He humiliates.
Yeah.
So he and granted, like yeah, Hook is a tyrant and like hell bent on his death, right? But
Yeah.
like no respect for his elders,
Yeah.
and particularly at that time, that was a particular crime. Yeah. So what is there? What else is there really to dig into? We haven't gone through a synopsis of the movie.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
like they get to Neverland. Oh, I think the symbolism around Peter Pan's shadow is really interesting. Because when he shows up, he's there because he can't find his shadow, which there's a Carl Jung, I need to integrate my shadow thing that's
right,
going
right.
on there as well. And so what Wendy
Especially if his
does,
shadow is Captain Hook.
yeah, exactly, right? Or like
Yeah,
it's this like because it's this, he hasn't integrated it yet. He's lost it.
Yeah.
It's gotten out of
Well,
control,
yeah,
and
like
it's
his the abyss that he refuses to look into is that he is essentially he's just a few years away from being the
exactly,
other.
yeah. But okay, so then what does Wendy do? She sews the shadow to him, which is, I don't know how that
Integrating
works
it.
metaphysically, but like, well,
Right, right.
she's reminding him of like, hey, you can't. She ties it back to him. You can't,
Yeah.
which as a when they go through puberty and enter maturity, that will happen because boys start getting really self-conscious as they're
Mhm.
like they can't escape their shadow nature that the women in their life remind them of. Like they all their insecurities feel like are just reflected back to them by women. And so when Wendy's sewing the shadow to him, that's a reminder to him. Now he's kind of trying to ignore it,
Mm.
but it's tying it to him that he can't ignore the realities of the future that are ahead.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And yeah, and nothing will recall to you your inadequacies and shortcomings faster or harder than
Than a woman
like
you're attracted to.
than a woman you're attracted to just giving you the stark feedback.
Yeah.
Like I'm 44 and I still remember my crush in grade school. Maybe it was in middle school. Yeah, it was in middle school when Rachel turned around and said to me, "Do you ever shut up?" And it was like it was that moment. She's like, "Let me sew this shadow right to
Yeah,
you,"
right.
you
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah.
and I'm 44. I still remember it. Like it still
Yeah.
stings. And you know, no, I don't.
No, I keep
Uh,
talking. Now I have a podcast where I just keep
exactly.
running my mouth. But and even if even if they don't say it, like, oh my gosh, I like that girl. What what do I have to offer that would be? And now I'm searching myself. Now I'm trying to figure out
Yeah,
like how
yeah,
do I even get someone's attention in a way that's going to be good, right? Even just
yeah,
like the fact of that person being there
yeah.
is it brings out that insecurity. So yeah, I mean and that's the start of their story. That's where they've now joined together and they're leaving on their adventure to Neverland, right?
Yeah, yeah. So we go to Neverland, which is the place where Peter Pan can try to demonstrate value, and where Wendy gets to physically explore sort of like the
Hmm.
the tepid psyche of a teenage
Right.
boy.
Yeah.
And of course all the girls love him.
Yep.
You know, in Peter's magical world, he's got all the fantasies. All
Well,
the
all
mermaids
the
love
girls love him,
him.
but he's kind of disinterested in that too.
Oh
Like
yeah,
he's
yeah.
interested in going and play. Like he's not. He likes the attention,
Right.
but he's not like, oh, how do I get them to like me? It's all just a fantasy of everyone already thinks I'm great no matter what I do.
Yeah, yeah, and it's indicative of his sort of like arrogant callousness. I think
Yeah.
is like, of course they all love me, and I'll have them, when I please.
Yeah.
They have
Yeah.
no
Right.
real weight or merit to him,
Right. Right.
except he has to rescue Tiger Lily in this weird kind of sense of virtue, like this weird sort of honor that he
But even
possesses,
then,
which
he's playing a game.
right,
I don't get the sense of like it's a sense of virtue or honor. It's like, all right, I'm playing the game. This is my battle with
yeah,
Captain Hook, and she's just
right.
kind of like
True.
the
It's
pawn
more
in that
about
game.
beating Captain Hook at the game than it
Yeah,
is about Tiger Lily's like safety or anything.
yeah. He's playing pirates and
Um,
Indians, and she's the
yeah,
object of the story at that point. But he's yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I love so I've also recently been reread Tom Sawyer. I don't know why I'm on this kick. It's probably because I don't have an Audible subscription anymore. So I'm like just going to the library and like
Grabbing yeah,
so it's like all right, we got classics. And the romance and the excitement and the fantasy the Indians, as different actor that they use in those books and in the movie, like provide to, little Anglophone white kids.
right.
And I assume all kinds of kids all over the world because it was like such a novel thing
Yeah.
to discover entirely new people groups and like Indians were of huge fascination to the British. They were
Hmm.
of huge fascination to, I mean, clearly Mark Twain and little kids in the South.
Right.
Like you wanted to engage and pretend and play in this
Yeah.
amazing, fantastic,
Yeah.
sky's the limit kind of mythology.
Well, the
Um,
Cowboys and Indians were that was the game kids played forever, and there's
yeah,
sports teams named after both sides of that, right? It's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And so, again, as I usually do, push back against the sort of like the little preamble because
Yeah,
people.
what's your
Okay.
take on that for this one?
Well, at first, I'd like to steel man it. I'd
Yeah,
like to start by steel manning that, like, but especially to our modern
yeah,
eyes. For one thing, I don't think anyone got really, really upset about portrayals in that until like the 90s. It was until
right.
like the very end of the 20th century
Yeah,
that people started kind of like cringing. And even then, only like slightly. And so, but to steel man it, like if I was a Native American and
yeah,
I was over at my friend's house and they're like, hey, let's put on Peter Pan. And like you get to that part, on the one hand, I can see it being like, whoa, dude, like what the hell?
yeah, yeah,
Because it's like I don't get the sense that there's anything in it that's like mean spirited, but it is really flippant and it
yeah.
is full of racial stereotype.
Yeah, I
And
mean
and
the stereotyping caricature nature of its having. I mean, it kind of is with a lot of characters. I mean, it's an animated
and
story,
and
but
yeah, we've talked about how like stereotype is very different than
right,
like bigotry, than like
right.
prejudice.
Yeah, yeah,
And they can overlap, but they
right.
don't necessarily. And that stereotype is a large method of how you cartoon things. Like Michael is a very stereotypical little British boy.
Yeah,
Nana is a very stereotypical British dog. Tinker Bell is a very stereotypical, 50s blonde party girl.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? So like we have stereotypes all over the place,
yeah,
and this one happens to be a pretty broad brush that
yeah.
they're painting all of the Indian characters with. But it's like I honestly, oh, I'm not steel manning it. So if I steel man it, I would say like stereotyping is bigotry, and you cannot deny that they're stereotyping
Yeah, I
Indians.
mean the character, like the native Indians in it, it's like they're not like heroes of the story. They're
Yeah,
kind of just dopey Indians, and
yeah.
it's got that feel of like these are just like yeah, not
They're
the
appendages
yeah,
to Peter's fantasy.
which
So
is kind of yeah. I mean they are right. So like
yeah,
they are
right. So
appendages
if
to his
if I
fantasy.
stop
Yeah,
steel manning, so I think my steel manning is like stereotyping along racial lines is always wrong, and it always equates to like capital R racism, and so this is racist.
well, and then these kids like they're not the smartest characters in it. They're kind of dopey
Yeah,
and
they're a
like
little
yeah,
silly and like, but like to steel man the opposite position, like they throw a dope party. All the kids want to be Indians. Like they come
right.
home from that party going like, this is all I want in the whole world is to be like these guys. And Tiger Lily is like the hottest babe in the whole movie. And most importantly, because the pirates are also stereotypical, right? Like these are all characters in a 12-year-old boy's imagination.
That was my thing. Is like this is a 12-year-old in the 50s idea of what an Indian is.
Right.
And that's what it was. Like that's probably
Yeah.
I would have thought of it in his fantasy land.
And even more, it's a depiction in the 50s of what a boy in 1904 would
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
from England that Indians
Yeah.
might be like. And so it's a pure fantasy. And so with Steel Manning the sort of benefit of the doubt, like it's not like Peter's like, let's go save Tiger Lily. She's a member of the Iroquois, and this is
Yeah,
what
right.
all the
Right.
Iroquois are like.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like he's part of the Indian tribe. Like
Right.
it's so clearly like a child's
Yeah, yeah.
idea
Yeah.
that they're playing within. And so I mean, look, I can understand someone is like, whoa, that's
Yeah,
like
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
real stereotypical. And,
Yeah.
and
Right.
yeah, it totally is. But
Yeah.
also it doesn't occur to me as mean spirited. And I think like,
I mean, I
I mean,
could
look,
understand, like you said, how someone would react to it that
yeah,
way, but you put it in the context, because it's a kids movie, so most kids aren't going to
yeah,
look at it like with this level of nuance
yeah,
about it, but also like most
yeah,
kids aren't going to think like this is saying a statement about this group of people. It's
yeah.
we're playing this fantasy, right?
Yeah, and I think if and when the conversation comes up with my own kids, it's not about saying, well, the people who made this movie were racist and
Hmm.
disliked Indians, because I don't get that.
No, I think it's a history
It's
lesson. It's all right. Here's kind of how
yeah,
this was depicted, and here's how like
yeah,
people would approach these types of things. And in the
and you go
fantasy of the
like,
story, here's
yeah,
yeah,
and these are imaginary Indians. This is not
okay,
supposed to be real Indians. This is what this little boy thinks Indians are like,
right.
just like what he thinks pirates are like, because
I
pirates
know
are actually
pirates who are way
way
more
worse.
sophisticated and way more deadly than Captain Hook, and this
That's
this
right.
did not do justice to
That's right. The
yeah,
nuance of piratical lifestyles
yeah, yeah,
and, the rich democracy that existed on these
yeah,
vessels.
right,
So yeah, so I think that's really all that needs to be said about that, because I think
yeah,
that's the only real.
yeah.
I think it's the only thing they're alluding to.
Yeah,
So yeah,
we touched on it, kind of wrapping up the victim or the villain comeuppance thing.
yeah,
Yeah, Captain Hook gets chased off by the crocodile with the ticking clock. That's reminding him, I would say, of how old he is, and you were too old to be here, and it's
yeah,
time to leave. But
yeah,
it's when you avoid growing up, when you avoid maturing, time always catches up to you, and
yeah,
you're left with the terror of all the time I just wasted here in Neverland because now I can't just live as a kid anymore, and you wind up thoroughly depressed.
yeah. Well, and
Yep.
so how many? I think previously men, because like we discussed, in the especially up through the 50s and 60s, before like the advent of birth control and other social movements, like female maturity happened whether you liked it or not.
Yeah.
Male maturity was largely optional. Now both are largely optional. And so how many people of both sexes do you and I know, especially in big cities like Los Angeles, where everyone's there to pursue their dreams? Like
Yeah.
everyone is there to actively engage in the economy of Neverland.
Yeah.
How many people do we know that time did, like that crocodile did pursue them to the point where they're going like, oh, now it's really late for me to have kids. So even like I got, second marriage and went ahead and had kids, and even still I'm going like, yeah, it's pretty late. Like
Hmm.
if I could do it all over again, I would have started earlier. And
Yep.
people who I know who are now infertile,
Yeah.
or they're just looking down the barrel of trying to afford college when they're 65,
Yep.
and how real Captain Hook's fate,
Yeah.
which I don't think you can go into Peter Pan syndrome without it being
Yeah.
connected to Captain Hook. I
Yeah.
think that's really really astute. How many people we know are suffering Captain Hook's fate?
Yeah. Well, and it's the decision to mature and grow up, whether that's having kids or the way you think about your future or career or whatever. Like there's a lot of decisions that come up with that. Time will always be your judge on that one, and your decisions, some
Mm.
of them will age well and some of them won't, right? And a lot of times it's like, all right, I'm going to delay, whether it's having kids or still pursuing this dream or whatever, like it seems glamorous early on. Will those things age well? Like we'll see. Depends on how you
Yeah,
approach it. Depends on the way you go about that. I would argue if they're ever going to age well, requires you to approach something with some sense of maturity. Otherwise, even if, you're pursuing some artistic dream and hit it big, that's where I think you get a lot of these cases of like someone having this big glamorous party lifestyle and a massive crash in their lives because they don't develop any of the maturity or the character to be able to sustain it.
yeah, yeah. It's like every rock and roll movie, like every biopic of
Yeah.
a musician is like
Yeah.
they are living Peter Pan's life, and they hit it
Yeah.
big. The world becomes their Neverland, and
Yeah.
then it inevitably destroys them.
Yeah. And then
Um,
even if it like doesn't like destroy them or their career, like eventually they hit a point where they have to go through some painful realizations,
yeah,
and you see people like they enter this next phase of their career where now
yeah,
they're approaching it a little bit more mature and at a pace that's a little bit more sustainable. It can't just be life in the fast lane. Otherwise
yeah,
you burn out.
yeah.
So anyway, yeah, we
It's
could go off on that for a while, but yeah, there's a lot
yeah,
there.
yeah. So I think what we're really realizing is that like Peter Pan syndrome inevitably results in Captain Hook syndrome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So anyway, that's yeah,
cool.
that's Peter Pan.
That's
This one
Peter
is fun. I
Pan.
think there's a lot of rich stuff in there. I'm sure if we really drill into it, we could mine a whole lot more out of it. Maybe we'll do another round two on it. But yeah, this one was fun.
We'll see you next time.